Let me introduce you to my panelists here. We have Macharia Gaitho, who is a veteran journalist, has been an editor here for special projects and features, and has been keen on this. In fact, he has written an article for tomorrow's column in the Daily Nation that will touch on the very topic that we will be talking about, and he'll tell us a bit more on that. Thank you for coming. And Catherine Gicheru, Happy New Year, at least for Presspass. Thank you for joining us. She is an International Center for Journalists Fellow, has also been an editor here at the Daily Nation and also at the Star. And next to her is the government spokesman, Eric Kiraithe, who has also been the police spokesman and very relevant to this conversation tonight. Let's set the pace here. In telling of the story of the arrest of the Akashas and two other accomplices, here's an example of how it played out on various media platforms. Nation Media Group, Standard Media Group are among the media houses that are in possession of some evidence likely to be used in the trial of the Akashas in New York. The footage shows Ibrahim Akasha testing the quality of what is believed to be narcotics and making a deal with undercover agents to get them more of the merchandise. Andrew Cheng filed this report.
The video is set in lush apartments in what appears to be the capital, Nairobi. At the beginning, Ibrahim Akasha, one of the four men extradited to the United States, is seen opening a piece of paper with white powder. All through the video, it is referred to as the merchandise. Akasha gives it to one undercover agent to have a taste, probably to check on the quality. The undercover officers are posing as middlemen of a wealthy buyer. They then light it on fire, again to check its quality. The video that lasts nearly 30 minutes showed the men speak in Arabic, French, English and Swahili as they discuss the deal. The agents luring the Akashas want what appears to be 2 kilos of the drug, but the Akashas only have one at the moment. The agents insist on having the 2 kilos and are willing to wait for it inside the apartment as the Akashas and the rest of the crew go to get it. In the end, they get all they want and leave the house to go and meet the crew. Akasha wants to be a regular customer and asks the officer whether he would be open to another deal. The officer says he doesn't mind as long as the merchandise is of the same quality. The video may be among the evidence that was used to get the suspects arrested and eventually extradited in attempts at bringing the alleged drug suspects to justice. The Akashas and two foreigners were extradited to New York early last week and will face trial for trafficking heroin and methamphetamine. The Kenya police has dismissed claims that the operation was spearheaded by American drug enforcement agents because of fears that the local officers would be compromised.
Who told you anybody has been arrested by foreigners? We did the arrest ourselves.
The investigation part?
We did ourselves. Give me the evidence to the contrary, if you have it.
The American case before
I don't know.
They conducted on their own, including having the...
Give me the evidence. Give me the evidence. The entire investigations took time and we did it ourselves. Obviously, because this was an international web, it involved other international partners. I mean, other partners from foreign jurisdictions.
The police and other leaders are using the extradition to serve as a warning to other drug barons, especially in the coast.
So this has played out, of course. This was recent, last night actually, in most media houses. This is when they got the footage that is being spoken on that was used in the undercover operation. And I'd first like to invite the government spokesman on this, because you've been very keen on how we've covered this issue. And it's been quite the interest point since the arrest of the Akashas, the two brothers and two accomplices. And you of the opinion that things have been skewed?
Well, what I would say is that by and large, in terms of sensitizing the people, in terms of publicizing, a good act of detection and investigation, the media has done a good job. But in terms of giving credit where it is due, I think you have been a bit economical in accrediting the government of the day, our own security agencies, and making it appear as if some people flew from somewhere, got into the country, and walked out to the criminals.
How important would it be then to inform this narrative? Macharia, just respond.
First of all, I disagree with Mr. Kiraithe. I don't think the media has given that narrative the way he puts it. It has been very clear all along in all reports I've read that these fellows were arrested by Kenyan police. It has also been clear that Kenyan police were cooperating with the U.S. agencies, principally the DEA and the FBI. That has not been in doubt. In fact, I don't know why the Inspector General of Police is getting so heated up about it, because there's no dispute there. Kenyan police, yes, effected the arrests. If there were American agents involved, they only did so partnering with the Kenyan police,
right.
But nobody has said anyway in the Kenyan media that these guys simply flew in on their own, carried out the arrests, and took those guys away. That has not been said anywhere.
Perhaps it was because it was shown that they were flown out in chartered airline. Catherine, to give credit where it's due in terms of this story?
Like Macharia says, they've done, I mean, I don't think any media house has said it's the Americans who came in and picked them up and went away. But then it also raises the question, and I guess maybe that's where the police boss is getting feelings, is because it's taken maybe 15, 20 years to,
right.
I mean, the stories or the reports or the claims or the cases have been going on for years. So the question then somebody would ask is, where did we get this strength, as it were, or this...
Seemingly sudden.
Suddenly because as late as last year, we had this conversation going around, and it's been happening every year. Every year we've been hearing we're going to crack down on this, including the time when the government actually moved in to try and sort out the problem of the junkies in the coast.
Yes.
But nothing happened.
Right.
So the question then, maybe that's why he's feeling a bit under siege when, and my brother here feels as if the media has been presenting the story in the way in which it should not be, but in another way.
How important is it
if I had been mistaken, I think I wouldn't be mistaken anymore, because she has just confirmed what is astonishing me and what must very justifiably have irritated the Inspector General. Because when you say 15 to 20 years without seeing anything, I think within in 2005, 2006, we had a major haul of drug capture in this country. And from time to time, I've been in the airport at JKIA, right, where we have literally reduced the cases, especially between 2013 and 2016, when I was getting these statistics frequently. We have literally reduced the number of drug ores which passed through our airport to zero.
Significantly, or just catching some of the brokers?
And a few months ago or a year ago, we were blowing up a ship in the high seas. So when you start creating an impression that this is the first arrest in 15 to 20 years, then I think we are seriously mistaken. I would have brought the statistics if I thought this matter will arise. What I am asking my colleagues in journalism,
right,
if there has been a consistent war well done by the government against drug traffickers, let us just go flat out and say, we might not like the government in every respect, but in this particular respect, they have done a good job.
Let her clarify first, and then Macharia.
I think you want to hear what you want to hear, but I have to explain myself if I have to over and over again. The situation you're talking, the case of the arrest of the Akashas, the issue of the Akashas, they've been suspected of drug trafficking from the day before their father was killed. That was in the early 90s, coming all this way. By the time he was taken out in Amsterdam or wherever, the same family has been mentioned time and time and time again. And when you talk about we have been consistently fighting from 2013 till now, yes, you've actually arrested a number of mules. That is true. But we're talking in terms of people actually bringing in for transshipment through Kenya huge amounts of drugs, some of which have been found, some of which have not been found. And that is why this country has been listed as a major transshipment for drugs. So yes, maybe I'm not disagreeing that you're doing your best, but the question I was asking is, how come all of a sudden we've been able to capture, or for that matter, to find evidence which can then, or to allow these people to be taken out of here after being arrested with our help, of course, with the police help, to go out and face the charges that they might be facing.
Yes.
You know, it is one thing to have consistent occasions of drug seizures and to arrest small-time peddlers. But when it comes to arresting and convicting the kingpins of drug trafficking in Kenya, I would say success rate is zero. And that is why Kenya, from the 1990s to today, still continues to be a major transshipment point for drugs, to the point that people are bringing drugs to Kenya from South America only for export to the US and the US, instead of taking them directly, because Kenya is so, the borders are so fluid and so welcoming to drug traffickers. And that is because of the corrupt systems. Take the Akashas, for instance. Everybody knows that from the 1990s, late 90s onwards, those guys have owned the coast. When I hear today, he's called Marwa, the provincial something or other. What do they call them these days?
Provincial commissioner.
Provincial commissioner, declaring war on drug dealers in Mombasa. How long has he been in Mombasa, and how long have the Akashas been there? Let me tell you, if you want to be serious, go beyond the Akashas. Start by removing all the top cops in Mombasa, the judges, the government commissioners, and everybody else, because all of them have been in the pockets of the Akashas. Today we can say good riddance to Baktash and his brother and the other two characters. Yes. But and that was necessary. Forget about the niceties of the proceedings, because those guys were going to work. If that matter was to be concluded in a Kenyan court, those guys were going to work, and the signs were clear. Right. There's another one which we don't want to touch on. Mr. Kiraithe mentioned about the president destroying a drug ship. Yes. That may have been a good PR stunt, but what is standing out in court, that it was destruction of evidence. Yeah. So the fellows who owned that drug hole are going to work because the evidence has been destroyed. Then you have to wonder, are these guys in cahoots with the smugglers or what?
But it also raises...
Let me clarify these two things.
Let me just add one small thing. It also raises the question whether the arrest of Baktash is to give room for others to come in their place, because as we know, the families or whoever is behind the drugs trade, when one goes down, somebody else fills the space. And until you clear, like he says, up to the bottom, from the top all the way down to the bottom, arresting mules who are carrying a few pellets, or 50 pellets, 100 pellets of whatever, either taking it out or bringing it in, that is just not
treating the symptomic evidence.
This is one of the rare opportunities, Mark, I have to explain to the public what happens when you see some of these cases happen. The Akashas could have been, by reputation and also anecdotal evidence, been drug dealers. But when my sister says all of a sudden, the amount of work it takes first to create a character will get the confidence of a drug dealer. Two, to get the drug dealer into situations like the ones you are watching there, where he is being videotaped without his own awareness by detectives. And finally, to catch him with hard and fast evidence of 100 kgs of heroin is not and shall never be an issue of all of a sudden. It is a painstaking, well-planned, prolonged process. Only a few very talented and careful detectives are able to pull in a generation anywhere in the world. So give credit. And therefore, Macharia, we are not going to start sacking the senior police officers just now. They have a good job. They have done a great job for this country and for our children. And I think if I was the person calling the shots, they will be having medals and promotions, Marwa included, whether he impresses you or not.
Well, the Deputy President yesterday earlier admitted that there have been those who've been compromised and things have been done to bring them to book.
The number of policemen journalists, you know, the courts compromised, notwithstanding here, that should not be meant to cover. The deputy president admitted it, I admit it, that they are there who want to enjoy the quick cash. Politicians. Because, Mark, when I hear people trying to politicize and looking for conspiracy theories, we know in this country there are individuals and groups of relatively small individuals who have made big time money.
Right.
But the amount of noise, show-off, and arrogance which comes out of people, okay, it's a lot of money, but compared to people we know, it would not count for much. But the amount of arrogance we see in these people, the amount of social control they want to exercise, is always something which, unfortunately, and for which I would want to blame the media, is something we treat all of a sudden as heroic.
So you're saying the media plays
Because
part
of the
in
logis.
making heroes out of these drug barons?
That statement, that one is very correct. Because
can he-
the
can-
minute
can-
you are
can he give
flaunting around
examples?
Can
Can
he
you-
tell
this
us the
money,
particular
Yes.
people, if not the Akashas, who
Who
specifically
else?
is he talking about?
Right.
We have just said we don't politicize this thing. So let us be clear about it and let him tell us who in particular is he talking about.
you know what, Macharia,
Instead of throwing wind vanes around.
I won't tell you because you did
Because
not
you-
come to Kenya yesterday. We
No,
have been
no, no,
around
no, no. You
here
are the
for a
government
long
spokesman.
time.
Yeah,
You
and-
are the government spokesman. You should not be afraid
The
of anyone
government-
or anything.
the
And the other
government-
thing is you're
Name them.
making certain assumptions that the audience you're speaking to, the citizens you're addressing,
Also
know
know.
what you're talking about. The things you know are not the things we all know. So can you tell us who
Privileged
are these
information.
individuals or personalities whom you claim the media has been glorifying, although they are suspects?
It is not the media alone. I have said we have politicians.
Right.
Okay, name
And
them,
it is
name them,
not
name
for-
them.
but- okay, Macharia wants me to name
Yes.
Yes.
government spokesmen.
Yes.
Don't name people at this point in time.
What I'm telling you is this: a
Government-
government spokesman is irresponsible
the government-
when he
the
goes throwing
government
around
spokesman-
information
Right,
which he
right.
cannot himself verify.
The government spokesman tells the public, and I tell them now, there is a singer who said, when somebody dies, we go there and say, alikuwa mwizi sana, muweke pema peponi. Let us not call people prominent businessmen. Let us not brand them leaders when we know that they are drug traffickers.
Very well.
Let us
In the
cooperate.
same
In the
breath, you
instances.
cannot
Hang on
not
there.
Can those
name
drug,
them, those people
can
you're
those
saying
drug
are
traffickers
being
be arrested and
Hang on
charged?
there.
Simple.
Hang on there. I am not an activist.
Neither
But
am
I
I.
can
Neither
tell
are we.
you on matters of common notoriety, on matters of anecdotal evidence, the media, the public of this country can do more to assist the security agencies gather hard and fast evidence so that we see more of the kind of arrests we are talking about tonight.
Let me
shouldn't
tell you,
it
let
come
me,
more
let,
from
let me come in here.
authorities?
This is what I call pure dereliction of duty. If the government knows people who are drug traffickers, you don't say the media should help you. Gather your evidence as you did with the Akashas, arrest them, and do what must be done.
Right.
Anything else is pure politics. And that is what I was saying. Let us not politicize these things. Let us be honest about it and let it fight it. This is a scourge that has turned Mombasa into a trafficking haven.
Right.
And those hard drugs, initially maybe we thought it doesn't matter because they're destined for Europe. But look at the number of zombies today we have in Mombasa. Because those
lives have
those
been wasted.
hard drugs obviously filter down to the local
And by the
consumption.
of that,
way, let us not
So
be,
let us
be
be
too
serious
excited.
about it.
Yes.
Let us not be too
get too
excited.
excited. Yes, correct.
The government has been very, very clear
Right.
that however big you are, however small you are,
Whichever side of the political divide.
whichever side of the divide you belong, you are killing a generation. And we are working day and night. Unfortunately, Macharia, I will not tell you the traps we have laid and on who, because professionals don't talk like that.
All right.
But I will tell you for a fact that the activities are there, they will go on, and the Kenyans will see more. One thing I wanted to make a correction very fast. Let us not condemn Mombasa and say it is a center for drug trafficking.
But it is a major entry
The
point.
problem is there. It has been used to transit drugs, that's
Right.
a fact. But we have a lot of good people in Mombasa, NGOs, government civil servants, even journalists. You know, if that will make you a little bit comfortable, who are working day and night.
And she's working in Mombasa,
People
yes.
developing hotels, tourism, people working to make this country a greater place for us to live in.
Your point to this end?
And therefore, my point to this end is that let's not get overexcited
Right.
and join in the cacophony of joining Mombasa as a major drug trafficking hub. It is not.
Within Kenya, though, isn't it?
Maybe the effects have not been seen also as much as in Mombasa. It is a problem. I'm not saying drugs are not a problem in Mombasa. And even if I said so, you would see government activity, how much focus it has put there. Every major drug haul we have dealt with for a long time now has at one point or the other interacted with the coast.
Okay.
And it is the nature of cost. But let us not go out there and tell the world that Mombasa is a basket case. Mombasa has very many positive aspects, which as a government spokesman, I will not allow it being branded.
Well, we're talking
in
about
a manner that
I-
negates those.
government spokesman, with all due respect, we're talking about Mombasa. Wouldn't it be, sinking our heads in the sand for not admitting that that is actually a major entry point and where it's actually a hub in many ways?
Well, you
Mombasa.
realize that less than a year ago, actually a few months ago, around October, the government completely overhauled the management of the port of Mombasa. Completely. Security, whatever, it completely overhauled the systems. That tells you something.
Catherine, just make a clarification before you take a break.
The president himself has made a statement from Mombasa. His deputy has gone there and made a statement from there. So we are not burying our head in the sand, but the total branding and the condemning of Mombasa.
Nobody is
should not.
condemning Mombasa as a whole. Nobody is condemning
Yes.
Mombasa as a whole.
Right.
What we are saying is we have to acknowledge that there is a problem. Mombasa is a major transshipment point.
Right.
That is proven in Kenya police reports, in all other government reports, in UN reports. There's no doubt about that.
Can you
And we
quote-
will not solve the
can-
problem
can
until
you quote
we
this?
first acknowledge it.
Okay.
This does not mean condemn. It is a condemnation of Mombasa, not at all.
And
That
to
is a
the-
very
to the
erroneous
international world,
interpretation.
to the international body. Catherine, just make your point before we take a break.
I get this sense that once we talk, that takes care of action. And for me, there's been a lot of talk, too much. It's been 15, 20 years that we've been talking about dealing with the scourge of drug trafficking at the coast, especially. It's been a lot of talk,
Right.
and when it comes to action, we get more talk.
Yes.
And I get a sense that the little bit that we do, we want to glorify it for the next decade and talk about it for the next decade and do nothing in between. So when you say we are condemning Mombasa, we are not condemning Mombasa. We are condemning the fact that we've allowed Mombasa to become the major transshipment it is. Not so much as saying the tourism and all that investment. That investment is going to go to the dogs unless we do something about this problem. Unless we accept that it is a problem. Unless we accept that maybe whatever it is that we've been doing is not enough, we need to do more. Maybe it's accepting and saying, by the way, we need help here. And that help is not going to come from me. It's going to come from reviewing our strategy. Destroying ships because they've got drugs, that is destroying evidence. Who are we going to be? The people who are responsible will not be arrested, and even if they are, they will walk away. The moment you start clamping down and taking down whatever assets are supposedly the proceeds from drug trafficking, whether it is my small car, because I've been arrested, because the laws are there. We do not enforce the laws, but we talk, and talk is cheap. The action is what is lacking, and that is my biggest concern here.
We need to do more, and we need to talk a bit more on the other perspectives that are coming out in this war on drugs when we come back from this break. We've been talking about this issue of the war on drugs, and if we have been giving it the right perspectives as the story is told. And just a point that needs to be clarified, it was made in the first part when Macharia Gaitho said, in fact, when the drug haul was destroyed, there was crucial evidence that went down with it, therefore interfering with what would have been the investigation on this. And Kiraithe wanted to make a clarification.
This is a very curious misinterpretation of the law. Having been an investigator myself and having been to court for a long time,
right,
I would want to make it very clear that the destruction of the ship was not tantamount to the destruction of evidence. What happens when you have an exhibit,
right,
for example, a living cow, you have an exhibit which is perishable. Remember that in a case like murder, the body becomes an exhibit. What you do, you carry out a scientific process of preserving that evidence. The school of thought, which has been popularized in this country, and I believe it was by some bad courts as individual presiding judges, magistrates, and so on.
right,
It's very strange jurisprudence, by the way. Very strange, because you will not find it anywhere else in the world. Once you capture things which will provide logistical, what they call the degree of expense is unjustifiable of storing and preserving that evidence.
So in this particular case,
So in
with all
this particular case, once the evidence was recovered, the full international practice was followed. It was weighed, samples were taken, and preserved, just like the way a postmortem report can be produced in 10 years. I'm just giving that to make it a shortcut so that I don't give a lesson on the law of evidence here.
Okay, I will respond.
So what happens is that when the court refuses to take judicial notice of some facts. Let me tell you, I started my career investigating stock theft. And there is no day you will take a goat to court. You photograph it, and that photograph under certificate. Macharia is laughing because our courts, when corruption became too much, and I hope that one is now reducing, decided to treat every investigator as a suspect. That even if you are called to the scene from your house and told, take photographs, collect forensic evidence, and you preserve it, there is a whole procedure
right,
that you can get even from the internet. In cases of narcotic drugs, there are plenty of international standards, even in the UN website, on issues of dealing with these exhibits. The issue of carrying the exhibit in court is really neither here nor there.
but destroying what would be seen as crucial
what
evidence.
happens, of course, we are always banning these drugs because storing them might create other. And what was banned was the ship, which was used to ferry, and that is according to our laws.
Listen, I do not disagree with Mr. Kiraithe. He is right on the rules of evidence and procedures, and even in regard to this particular case. But he is arguing what he should. He's arguing here on TV what he should have been arguing in court, because what is happening in court now is that issue of the destruction of the ship has become an issue of whether the evidence was destroyed. And on that basis, those perpetrators could walk.
Yeah. Catherine,
let me clarify something. Or let's hear Catherine first. Yes. Maybe she'll be sending another barb my way.
No, I don't send barbs. We're having a conversation here because we want to understand what it is that we can do to to resolve this issue. My question, I mean, the whole thing about burning the sheep and the evidence or whatever, taking samples of it and using that as evidence in the case. How many cases, I mean, I would imagine there are numerous cases where people have walked because what was said to be coke was found to be unga. Yet the arresting officer at the time has arrested somebody because he tested and it was found to have been cocaine.
Right.
And this has happened consistently, where you have found somebody who's been charged with either having carried or having ingested and found with it, and then they say somebody was found carrying sugar. I mean, why would anybody swallow pellets of sugar? And the guy walks.
Right.
And that has happened whether it's the mule who's been taken to court and or consignment which has been held at the, not even at Mombasa actually, even at Namanga at Busia, where a whole box of stuff was found and it was said to be unga. And when they actually did the analysis, they found it was coke. But when subsequently the people appeared in court, it was found to be unga, real unga, like unga ya ugali. So the question is, you're saying that the laws of evidence allows us to destroy ships which were carrying the drugs or whatever. Then I would imagine that the 20 tons that were found in some go down somewhere should also have been destroyed in that same manner.
Let me give you, they were finally destroyed.
Eventually. But you held them. You held them in a place.
Let me give you
under security for a long time.
You cannot take a ship and put it in GSU and quarters. Anyway,
we are not saying you take the ship. We are not worried about the destruction of the ship.
Okay.
We are talking about the fact that if it was a matter of finding or convicting or in any form presenting evidence to convict these people, obviously the drugs should have been, but you destroyed the ship. Let
me give you a very clear, let's separate fact from fiction. The people who are charged with drugs,
right,
you might sound frustrated, but investigators are even more frustrated. It's a cartel which have devised more ways than one. The first strategy is going to court. They are very happy immediately they go to court. You have seen, I don't want to cast aspersions, but they get very, very quick representation. And almost all the time, especially these mules, go to prison. They are remanded. What happens after that is that the investigator goes away very happy, everything is safe. After that, it's an issue of adjournment. You know, somebody is from Ghana. Adjournments follow adjournments. And then this person is given a bond. Now, the investigating officers get transferred or die or something happens with passage of time. During this period, those cases which get into hearing, because maybe the government is too keen,
right,
there is usually a media strategy. Way before the judgment comes, the public is prepared with a, it's propositioned to show that police goofed. Even where international agencies give Kenyan certificates for a job well done. I know a Kenyan investigator who took part in several cases, a lady, and she ended up being employed by the US, by the DARE.
Because of a good job.
Because of a good, so what happens, the minute you start hearing that a case is in court, and the newspapers are awash with the story that the police destroyed the evidence, then that should send signals that everything is not right. What we need to
Are you suggesting
say,
that there's a clear agenda to show the police in bad light?
I think
it is not to show the police in bad light. Actually, it is not usually.
That cannot pass without challenge.
It will be challenged. Just wait
challenge.
to challenge it. The agenda is to give an excuse for releasing criminals on something called technicalities.
Are you saying the media has the power to influence the judiciary, or for that matter, to influence what the police or
whether
whoever
they become
is responsible?
innocent agents?
I mean, it's fantastic what you're saying, that
Whether the
media can actually
whether the
influence
media
what
are
the judge is going to
innocent
decide.
agents, or there is something done in between, they act to launder to the public eye an act which should never be excused.
I object most vehemently. What we're seeing from the government spokesman is that familiar game of government officials blaming the media for their own inadequacies. This issue of that ship which was destroyed, and that it has not been prosecuted as a matter of destruction of evidence, it was not created by the media. It is in the court. It is what is being pushed in the court. And from what we are seeing as reporters, that is the way that case is going. Right. Now, if the...
Let me ask you a deliberate question.
You have spoken enough.
Let me just finish.
Now, if the government investigators and the prosecutors
And the judges
are not competent enough to argue those cases properly, that is why they lose. Then now you turn around and start blaming media. That is extremely pathetic.
Right. I mean, do you have evidence to the effect that there's an agenda, there's a clear agenda by media?
Let me ask a deliberate question. Macharia.
Ask, I'm listening.
Do you believe the narcotic drugs were recovered from that ship?
I have no reason to doubt.
But I have
Excellent. You have no reason to doubt.
it.
My question, my issue is...
Do you believe that the people prosecuted were actually the people arrested in that ship?
I have no reason to doubt.
Now, having no reason to doubt, let us differentiate two things.
Right.
How many?
Two.
It is just like courts releasing somebody who have defrauded the government of 40 million, 100 million, because they did not get evidence from the person who signed the voucher, yet the money got into his account. What I'm saying is this: if the court or the journalists have a quarrel with the burning of the ship, let us treat that very differently.
Mr. Kiraithe, you're shifting the journalists have no issue with the burning of the ship.
To me.
The thing is that the defense lawyers are raising that. No,
there's a case right now.
There's a case going on.
You are not a defense lawyer.
I am. No. You're blaming journalists here. You are blaming journalists.
I'm not
blame your own system for allowing that ship to be destroyed in defiance of a court order. And when the matter comes up in court,
you are blaming
the defense
media.
has an excuse.
Let me conclude.
that evidence has been
Isn't
destroyed.
there a question to be asked about that?
Let me conclude what I was saying. Right. Thank you for protecting me. I am saying that let that not be used as an excuse to release criminals who have broken our law and are destroying our children.
And what I am saying is this: let that not be an excuse to blame the media. Right. Let the police and the prosecution put up a strong case in court, one which can stand all tests, and one which will persuade the magistrate that there is no other way to go than to convict. But if they present shoddy investigations and shoddy cases, maybe sometimes they will do it deliberately, then let them hang with it and not blame the media.
Catherine.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to get to the point where I was going to use a bad word, but I won't.
We're beyond the watershed period,
no,
but still.
Beyond the watershed, but still. No, but I just wanted to say one thing. At the end of it all, yes, you will praise yourselves as doing a good job, but the perception that the public has, and it's been borne out by your failures.
Who owns the perception?
Perception
Who is the driver?
The government.
The government.
Who is the driver of the perception?
Isn't it
actually, you're partly to blame because, for example, you mentioned that there are certain individuals who you say you cannot name, but whom the media glorifies and makes heroes. You don't say who they are when we ask you for that because you say all Kenyans know.
That is now politics.
That is yes,
not
politics.
politics.
But what I wanted to say is one thing, simply this. when out of 100 cases, the conviction rate is maybe 0,
Okay,
then you start asking
let's
yourself.
give them 0.1.
Okay, 0.1. Maybe I've been happy. Then people will start asking, and we are not stupid, and Kenyans are not stupid. They'll start asking questions. Ni shida yetu, ama ni shida ya jaji, ama ni shida ya nani? But when you come here and say you've got this excellent police investigations and all the rest of it, and yet it's 0.1, then, and the people who have been let go are the big fish, but the small guys, the Wanjiros who are carrying...
They get locked up.
They get locked up. Then you ask yourself, they will take pride in the mules, but they do not dare touch the barons.
Granted.
Because those barons are known, as he says they know them.
In fact, those
but
barons
nothing
are in their own political entourages.
Yes.
Well,
they're within their own system. So the question then comes in.
They are their financiers, political financiers.
Are they the same guys? I mean, you're sending a thief to catch a thief, or what are you doing here? Because is he willing to take a risk and arrest somebody
When a spokesman remains tight-lipped on that, hopefully you'll probably tell us one or two
I
things.
am not intending to remain tight-lipped for a very long time.
Oh, you're going to tell us who they are.
Because as we net them, we shall continue naming them one by one.
One by one.
And when you hear Macharia saying they are in our entourages, it tells you that he's asking me to name them might not be all that he expects me to do. He expects me to do some investigation as a government, which I'm promising Kenyans we are doing with a lot of seriousness. We have boys, girls, men, and women out there who are working day and night to make this country a better place to live in.
Just before I take another break, and then we'll have the last opportunity to address other issues. On that point of whether there's a clear agenda by the media to have some conceived agendas that to drive the convictions on certain cases, wouldn't you agree, as the Deputy President agreed, that there are some police officers who've been compromised, then there also is the judicial system that has been compromised that leads to the frustrations of those good investigators, which we know there must be some good investigators out there. It's not so much on the media.
Yeah, I think, Mark, on that respect, I agree with you. But I think also in the media there is a way in which we can drive our editorial policy, our presentation of things, and we put shame where it belongs and glory where it belongs, because we know it.
All right. Let me just pause on this point, and we'll be back with more, especially on the politicization of this whole war on drugs and whether it actually falls on media as to how far this goes. Stay with Presspass. Let's get some of your responses as you have been following this conversation. Charles Gicheru says the journalists on the panel are up in arms defending the blowing up of the ship because they wanted to cook up stories for their benefit. Fini Namu says the Macharia guy is very annoying, or you've annoyed someone there. We know the media is used by drug lords to fulfill their evil deeds. Let me see. Bulogosi says, I don't know why I seem to deduce the Macharia guy, though sometimes just he opposes facts for the sake of it. You'll probably correct yourself there. James Mudhubi says, a corrupt media short of information, which they claim to own, will never admit facts. Just one last one here. Jakatwenga, when you give a layman too much time to lecture us on the law of evidence, then you have lost it. It's quite bad. Thank you for your responses. They're quite honest, and I really appreciate that. That's why we have Presspass here. And Ted Malanda says, I agree entirely. Mombasa is not a drug haven. This is agreeing with the statements here made by the government spokesman. It's really funny that these guys can ask such questions. Are they ever in Kenya? Where are these guys when things happen? I'm guessing this is as you continue following this conversation. Earlier today, Peter Mongangi put a story together just to ask on how much the war on drugs has been politicized. Let's listen in.
After a closed-door meeting with regional security and administration officials, Deputy President William Ruto spoke to reporters and admitted that sections or persons within the security agencies could have been compromised by illegal drug traders.
Yes, there could be officers that have been compromised by the drug barons, but we have been very clear, and I do not want to mention here some of the disciplinary actions that have been taken against officers that have been suspected to have participated or to have been compromised in one way or another.
The war on drugs in the region received an unprecedented boost from foreign agencies when key suspects, including members of the late Ibrahim Makasha family, were arrested and extradited to the United States of America.
This is one war against drugs and terror that we must win by all means. It doesn't matter what it takes, whatever it takes, whatever it costs.
President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy have in the last few days indicated that those arrested may be taken to other countries for prosecution.
We have created partnership now. When people are suspected by other countries and other countries have information that indeed these people have been engaged in this trade, it is natural for us, being partners in this war, to ensure that these people are handed over to the people with enough information, sufficient information to prosecute them.
With the general election just 6 months away, the opposition is accusing the government of politicizing the fight against drugs, a claim Ruto denies.
Last year, for example, the president presided over the destruction of a ship. The other year, we were on the same war path with drug barons. So our war with the drug barons has been consistent from the time we took office. And it is going to escalate even more, not because of the elections, because it is a justified war.
The government has made its stand clear and says that Kenyans will start seeing the results in the coming days. Peter Mwangangi, NTV, Mombasa.
And there was a swift statement made by James Orengo, one of the leaders in the opposition, and he says, partly in a statement that is on his Twitter page, excuse my voice, Jubilee has suddenly woken up to the fight against the use and trafficking of drugs, which is admittedly a national and existential problem in Kenya. When the routes of the Middle East, the Near East and Southern Europe were closed, traffickers opened new routes, including through East, Central and Southern Africa. It is a serious menace to the health and well-being of our citizens. However, Jubilee has lost its campaign in Western Kenya, in Kajiado, Narok and other areas. They have failed miserably in the coast, as recently demonstrated by by-elections. The anti-drug campaign, I'm just reading this real quick, in the coast is a fraud. Otherwise, why was evidence in the form of ship and its load destroyed by the government when a trial was ongoing in the High Court in Mombasa? Jubilee is targeting CORD or NASA leadership in the coast on everything and in anything. And then again, I jump at that power and I say Jubilee is just a paper tiger during the day and toothless bulldog at night. Government should never complain if they have legitimate authority and are driven by fairness, justice and the rule of law. There is no need for threats if there is evidence, and evidence without the application of just law is an exercise of arbitrary authority. The president and the deputy president should put up or shut up. Just a part of the statement that was put out on this latest war on drugs by the government. I'll start with you, Bwana Kiraithe. Your response to how politicized this issue becomes and whether it is either aided or catalyzed by us, the fourth estate.
What I would want to say is that trust Honorable Orengo to see politics in anything and everything, to borrow its words. But I would want to tell you that I think the president, as the commander-in-chief, has every responsibility to go and pat his officers in the back when they have done a good job. Another thing is the idea that the arrest and the action against Akashas is sudden is not true. This is, as I have said, obviously you see it's a long, drawn-out process, and it is also very unfortunate when somebody says NASA is targeted. I don't know whether it is the Indian or the Pakistanis or whether they are Akashas who belong to NASA. I would hate to think that. But at the end of the day, the Deputy President, having been a policeman for many years myself, I would say that it is a very great gesture when he turns up to encourage the officers for a job well done, holds a meeting with them, reviews their progress, and before that gathering is dispersed, pointing out that he knows there are some who are not very professional and telling the public action has been taken. I think that is very positive. I think also really we need to give credit to where it is due. What I would say is that if you belong to NASA or ODM or Jubilee or any political party, the best thing you can do for yourself is to stop any association you may have had with drugs. When we arrest you, we shall send you to where trial should take place, because narcotics is an international crime. It's a crime you commit here and the effects are felt elsewhere.
Internationally.
And vice versa. And by the way, the idea that Kenya is a major transit point, and I can be borne out by statistics, Kenya is not a major transit point
within the region
of international drug trafficking. The region, we have the region of East Africa as a very small share. There are areas like Somalia where there is no governmental authority whatsoever. The greatest thing about Kenya is that the interconnectivity, the international interconnectivity is very, very attractive. The activities at the port of Mombasa are also very, very attractive.
But we can't deny the significant part it plays.
It is, no, wait for me to finish.
Right.
The fact is that some of the drugs which land here have passed the U is U, Antwerp, Rotterdam. It is not because of anything else, but Kenya is very, very attractive. But to imagine that it is major, and when you go to the South Americas, then you'll have another new story. What happens here, and I'll clarify this because I've been in aviation, I've been in international transport,
All right,
is that Kenya is trusted because of the activity of the level of law enforcement. Whichever you think of it, the world does not think that. In the region, Kenya has a very high rate of law enforcement and detective activity, very high rated. And therefore, if you succeed to pass through Kenya, there's possibility that there is the concept of once checked, you are deemed clean. The possibility that you'll slip through other networks is very high because of the level of confidence the international detective rings have with what happens in Kenya. So, and the greatest advantage to prove to you this, anytime it seems the place is gathering momentum, the government is able to move in, the government is able to give very good access and cooperation to other international agencies.
Okay.
And that's why all these UNODC, United Nations on Drug and Crime, now have an office in Mombasa. They have an office in JKIA, which we are running jointly with them. We receive a lot of international information and tips. That is why we are likely to seem like that. So,
but wouldn't the fact that they have an office there show that they have a lot of work to do?
What is
terms of fighting
a positive should not be turned around to look like a negative. Once again, I would want to be very clear before Macharia talks that I am not denying the problem is here. Not at all.
And significantly so.
And it is very significant because even if you lose one youth, you lose one person, or it is, and we are not losing one person.
All right.
Okay. I heard what Mr. Orengo said. I was quite surprised because some of these politicians have a tendency to shoot themselves in the foot. And he has just given Mr. Kiraithe the ammunition to wonder whether the Akashas are part of the NASA or called leadership.
Right.
But then he might still have some justifiable fears because right here we have had Mr. Kiraithe, without mentioning names, try to politicize this war against drugs. Elsewhere, And I don't know that Mr. Kiraithe is on the loop, but we all know that the government runs a parallel information system. On one side, there is Mr. Kiraithe and Manoa Sipisu, who are the sober faces of government communications. On the other side, you have some fellows who employ guerrilla tactics, and you can already see them very active on Twitter under the hashtag system ya facts or something like that. Yes. And just pure dirty propaganda. And one of the things they did, I think, over the week, soon after this thing happened, is they took that indictment from the US court and inserted additional information which is not in the original documents, targeting specific code leaders at the coast. I don't know whether Mr. Kiraithe is aware, but that is part of the system, what they call the system facts. Okay. And if that is the way they are going to go, then obviously there is reason to worry. But all the same, we support the war against drugs. For the Akashas, I say good riddance. I hope they rot for life in the US jails. And anybody else in Kenya who is involved in drug trafficking, I hope they can go and be tried where they will be jailed, not in Kenya where they will never be jailed. But for me, the biggest positive is that we are now acknowledging that we are part of the international community. That we are now able to say we have our criminals here. We don't have the systems to punish them. They are involved in international and transnational crimes. Let us send them to jurisdictions which have that capacity. So I presume that by now President Kenyatta has withdrawn his statement of April last year, where he said that he will never send another Kenyan to be tried by an outside court. We have sent the Akashas, let us send more. International crimes, it also includes those covered under the ICC. So let us also solve that political nonsense of wanting to pull out of the ICC simply to satisfy the egos of some fellows who had some personal challenges with it.
When it's in the question of showing that the government is really keen on fighting war on drugs, beg your pardon, and the double standard there of what he's just brought up, because this will be another conversation, but people being tried out in different jurisdictions other than Kenya, shouldn't it be applied all through? That is a question. How genuine then is this fight on war on drugs, this war on drugs?
What determines where people are tried are very many issues. And there are very many conventions and bilateral agreements and protocols on certain crimes. Crimes regarding issues of terrorism, crimes of narcotics, and crimes against the safety and security of civil aviation and human trafficking are actually crimes in a category of their own. The other thing,
and also crimes against humanity.
Money
laundering,
corruption.
What I would want to put across is that there are very many crimes for which the definition Trump has trumped now of international community is so hypocritical that you must think about your own country first and what is the effects of it. What I am saying in very many words is that Kenya will cooperate, especially in the management, prevention, detection of crimes that affects its citizens negatively and whose action benefit the Kenyan. And Kenya will cautiously cooperate in all other areas where we think there is hypocrisy or there is a complete misrepresentation of facts, or where we think the international community wants to directly influence the destiny of this country against its own citizens. And having said that, I think this is, I can make my closing remarks. What I want to assure Kenyans is that under the current government, because I have served many governments in this country, we have gone to the top of the hill in management of very many criminal acts. And it does not matter the multitude of doubting Thomases. I think we are headed towards the right destination.
Well, as you make your closing statement, Steve Ongeri has a statement there. He's a question. Ask the spokesman to name one drug baron who has ever been convicted in our history.
Its definition of drug baron, I wish I had a fast and hard definition of drug barons, but I can tell you in our courts, even in Kebela court, we have convicted quite a good number of drug traffickers.
Right.
Not that we have done enough, or that I would tell you myself or the government is satisfied. We would want to see many more convictions. However, a lot has been done. Not all the courts take centuries with drug cases.
Yes.
Some of them are very sensitive and judicious, I can say that. Not every police officer is compromised. A lot of them are working very hard. And I think the current political will should be embraced by all, so that wherever you are, whether you are prosecuting, whether you are in the court, don't sell the youth of this country on technicalities.
It's the last one here, that just to be categorical, that this new wave of war on drugs is not targeting in any way.
Well, that is an assurance I can give without any fear of contradiction.
Any leaders in court?
That this war is not targeting any individual whatsoever. But if you are involved, you will certainly be a target. When we say that we are investigating terrorism, we are investigating murder, robbery, nobody thinks about any individuals. I am unable to understand why anybody is feeling strongly that the war on drugs is targeting them. Maybe the guilty are afraid, but I'm telling them there is no cause for alarm. If you are doing your politics, do them with all the sincerity, do them with all the courage. Nobody is looking for politicians. We are looking for drug traffickers, drug barons, and their cohorts.
Catherine, I probably perhaps didn't give enough time to this question, and whether a journalist working in the coast faces any form of intimidation when they're investigating or following up on such stories. I mean, if police officers are compromised, it limits the extent that a journalist can go. Because you have worked there.
I've worked there, and I think it's true, and it's not only working at the coast on stories that have to do with drugs. It has to do with any story you're writing where there's corrupt elements, and this can come from politicians and or the security agencies or anything. It's not specially different, right. I think, in my own way. But I just wanted to touch on the whole thing about the war on drugs. If they could fight it as hard as they're fighting, I mean, if they could fight corruption, because at the root of it is the fact that we are able to compromise officials, we are able to compromise the security agencies. So if they could actually do that much more. Right. And I am so happy that at least the DP has said we are willing to take our people out to courts where they have evidence or to prosecute. Right. Because I'm hoping in the next few days, like he said, we hope to see some of the people who have been accused of corruption, in which case not only corruption, because it's not local corruption, it's transnational, yes. Transcontinental. Yes. We hope to see some of them actually being taken there to face the charges there. Because as it is, like my brother said here, if they had stayed here, their cases, if they had stayed here, the cases would have gone like this. So we hope similar sentiment, similar vigor, similar robustness is applied to addressing the issues of getting rid of corruption, because if we can do that, then Kenya as a hospitable environment for the traffickers to come and transship their stuff will stop being so. Right. So that is the beginning. The fight does not start only on drugs. You start getting rid of corruption.
Where do we keep our lenses, especially as a media, when in this new wave of fighting drugs? How do we continue on with this? Not let it die off, because we know it's a problem.
I think we must keep pushing and demanding the results. as a Kenyan, as a parent, I support 120% the war on drugs.
Yes.
And I think all Kenyans should, because it poses a big threat to us as a nation and to our
as a
stability.
media, we certainly do.
And also to the health of everybody else. But I hope it is not prosecuted just as a temporary PR gimmick, like we saw with the so-called war on corruption, with that famous address to the nation. I hope also that our leaders, and I'm talking about here leaders on both sides of the divide, starting with President Kenyatta and Mr. Raila Odinga, can show a commitment to that war by first of all abandoning all association with individuals who are suspected of involvement in drugs or cases of major corruption or other transnational crimes. It does not send a good picture when the DP is declaring a war on drugs and next to him is a person who has been frequently mentioned as a drug trafficker. Whether these fellows are governors, aspiring governors, or top businessmen who fund their politics, you cannot come with clean hands if those are associates,
right,
and you're the same people saying you're going to go after. It will not work. So that should actually be the first step.
Right. And it should be like an example here in terms of pushing for answers. I mean, this is an example by the Standard on Sunday. This was yesterday, and they're persons of interest, because as media we're limited as to how much we can say strongly with evidence. I mean, even the government spokesman won't tell us anything. But is this one of the good examples that we can go about?
The government spokesman obviously is afraid of speaking. And I don't know about this particular case.
I've never been guilty of cowardice.
But what I can say is this.
Yes.
If I had a neighbor or a workmate or a schoolmate who is frequently mentioned in crimes of such nature,
yeah,
whether it is drugs or corruption or cattle rustling or prostitution, I would shun that person.
Right.
I would not want to be associated with him. As simple as that.
All right. And something else that you need to look forward to is the Nation agenda that started today. We'll be focusing tomorrow on this very thing, the war on drugs. And we'll have several articles that will be putting the focus here. As Macharia says, we need to continue seeking answers on this war on drugs and seeking out how genuine whichever side of the divide is on responding to the emerging issues. But the government spokesman says soon we'll be hearing names, so we'll be waiting to hear that and the evidence that comes forth to that end. Thank you very much for your time, government spokesman. Thank you, Catherine Gicheru, for coming. I hope you didn't get a headache. It looked like it at some point. And thank you, Macharia Gaitho, also for your thoughts. You've annoyed some people, but anyway, we thank you for your thoughts. We look out for his article as well, his column tomorrow on the Daily Nation. My name is Masai. Thank you on behalf of the team that has made this possible. Thank you for watching. Let's do this next week.